Hello, welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Gascoigne, and this is the show for business transformators who are part business strategists, part business designers, part collaborators, and part negotiators. Business transformators have moved past just business design and includes oversight of implementation of those business designs and business transformations, and includes stakeholder management, coordination, and negotiation. If you work in strategy development and implementation, and you work to ensure that it is aligned to the business design and technology, then you're probably a business transformator. This is the show where we speak to industry experts and professionals to share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you start, turn around, and grow your business transformation. Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we're talking to one of those experts. We are speaking to Peter Lee. Peter Lee is the current Director of Consulting, a head of business agility and consulting practice in Germany for CGI. He is an Agile coach at the Expert Agile Club, a Agile trainer at Trendig Technology Services in Germany, who sets trends and designs digital transformation through innovative engineering, knowledge, and events. A safe Agile organization coach and trainer for Media Group Germany, and previously held many senior Agile coach roles and positions, now spanning over 10 plus years, including senior consulting roles. Peter, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. How are you?
Thank you, Heath. It's good to be here. And that was a very nice summary. I was not even aware I have done that all, but it's good to hear from you.
Well, that's a summary. There's a lot there I could have gone for. So, there is a lot of history, a lot of experience you've got there, Peter. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep it short. We'll keep it focused rather. So our topic, for interest of time, because we could talk about a lot of things, and for the interest of the users, the listeners, is we'll keep it to three things. The Agile Manifesto. I think there's a conversation there around about it was developed some time ago, and have we shifted away from it? Are we still agile? Does it need updating? Does it need review? Or has there been version Manifesto 2.0? So second is the Agile Culture. It's a big thing. I'm a big advocate of culture. I think in this world, what we are, and now the work from home culture, which I just saw a big announcement from a big finance company to say that although they made an announcement some time ago, a few months ago, that they're all working from home, it's now they've given a drop dead date that everyone needs to be back in the office. So this culture, I think, is becoming more, people are more aware of it. It's like a competitive advantage if you do it well. And the third part, the psychological safety. Now, why we want to talk about safety is because in culture and behavior, people act and behave a certain way. And when they feel they cannot, due to safety concerns of whether it's, in architecture terms, we'll talk in terms of patterns, and certain patterns have a certain type of behavior because it has a certain result. And when you have the opposite being anti-patterns, which we'll talk about in more detail later, some things aren't discussed or some things aren't done, but they are reported as done, and that has other knock-on effects, all to do with culture. Okay, so to get us started, now let's refer to what we call, or what we've based everything off to get us to this point in terms of Agile, is the holy grail of Agile, the Agile Manifesto. So tell us about the manifesto, Peter. Are we, it was developed, 20 years ago? And now we're 2022, which is now, we're in the new century. This was developed at the end of last century. Are we still true to the manifesto?
That's a very good question. The manifesto, indeed, last year, it was 20 years old. It was celebrated globally with a lot of events. And if you are still looking at the manifesto, like the four values and the principles,
yep.
I think it's still valid, no doubt.
Yep.
What I'm also thinking of, and I think that's a very popular discussion within the Agile community,
yep.
is, do we need a fifth value? Do we need to expand with what we have learned in the last 20 years?
Yep.
And let's say you haven't been asking me yet, but I would definitely love, and that's of course related to the topic we are discussing tonight.
Yep.
mindset over culture. That would be
Oh,
the value I would love to add.
yeah.
And the main
Mindset over
reason
culture.
is, yeah, the main reason is we have a set of values we all understand,
Yep.
but what we are forgetting is we have our own interpretation, which is
Yes.
related to culture.
Hmm.
So this is the connection.
Yep.
This is where we have to add some stuff.
Yeah, there. I teach, and as I wrote in the book, and teach the students around about they get caught up in doing things iteratively, which is, let's say, correct by agile terms, but it's more first the mindset of doing things iteratively. And
Yeah,
so you have the mindset, and then you behave the way that your mindset will direct you. But yeah, the mindset is a big thing. Yeah, there's a conversation about, they say, is agile about scrums or Kanban board, or is it a framework? But first and foremost, I think it is a mindset change from the way things are done.
that's right. So what I see in daily life with colleagues, but also
Yep.
with customers, is we have a pretty good understanding of what is agile. We have a pretty good expectation from each other what we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm talking to guys who grew up with let's say SAFe,
Yep.
is it just an example?
Mm-hmm.
They have a different mindset. So it's it's slightly different how they see agility and how it
Yes.
should be implemented
Yeah.
within a company.
Yep.
When I'm talking to other guys who are related to Nexus, Scrum at Scale, their approach is also different.
Yep.
So it is interesting, and it's not about good or wrong, but it's more about, okay, how can we bring these parties together so we have a better understanding of what does it mean for us in
Mm.
general.
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's like the term business transformation means different things to different people, and as so does agile. Yeah, and it is getting that common language and agreed
Absolutely.
terminology. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good flashback, going from where we are now back to this business architecture, what's happening exactly there, and how can you use it. Now, I've read your book.
Oh,
There
thank
was
you.
a lot of stuff, and you're also mentioning culture in your book.
Yep.
But it's not yet in a, let's say, in a very granular.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
that would be nice for the next.
Well, you're gonna let the cat out of the bag if I tell you that part.
That's right. But if you're talking about culture, so I've read some other books, huh?
Yep. Can you
Like
can you recommend some to that you might have read recently around that?
so there's Erin Meyer. She has written the culture map, which is
Erin Meyer.
absolutely
Oh, the culture map.
wonderful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she's
Yep.
American. She's a professor at INSEAD and she lives in France.
Oh.
Now, her study is
Yep.
not related to Agile,
Uh-huh.
but I would love to give you a couple of examples
Yeah, sure.
because
Thank you.
it's very much related to what we do.
Uh-huh.
So in Agile teams,
Yep.
we are always talking about communication.
Yeah.
And she is mentioning we have this low versus high context.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A low context, what does it mean? Good communication is precise, simple and clear.
Yep.
Messages are expressed and understood at face value.
Uh-huh.
High context is good communication is sophisticated, nuanced, and layered, and messages are both spoken and read between the lines.
Uh-huh.
This is very different.
Yeah.
But if you look at low context, it's, for example, US, Netherlands, Australia. So we have a good understanding, Germany as well is also part of the low context. So we understand each other quite easily.
Yep.
If we're going to the high context, you're talking about China, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, and understanding each other is much, much more difficult.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you some experience with low versus high context?
Oh yes. Oh, very much. Yeah. I wouldn't want to say this separate the globe to make the comparison, but let's say in England, UK, that would be typically, I think, and you said, low context, what a spade's a spade. You're very clear, very concise. It's like the four styles of communication. Arrow, it's said and received in the same way that it's said, or the circuit was the three types of communication. The circuit, whereas it's almost you say it and it's received and reiterated back to you to confirm, and then the dance is where it is almost the other person complete your sentence for you, because you're in so synced that of what you say is they can understand you clearly and completely. There's no ambiguity, there's no misunderstanding. Now I think that is in, let's say, the Anglo-Saxon cultures, that would be pretty understandable and common practice. Maybe in the Asian, where you have different versions of dialect, or the semantics of the language is so, let's say, the minute changes mean big changes to the meaning, and so the complex. So, for example, I have when you're dealing with offshore resources in India or in Asia, and then when you say something, it can be conceived in so many different ways, and where that results to is like playing golf, where you make a subtle change to the face of the club, and you take the same swing, but now it's misinterpreted and it goes out miles away from where you wanted to, intended to, just by that subtle little change. Yeah, so I've experienced that. I can. Yeah, so the application of understanding the context in an agile environment is first understand the context you're in, and have appreciation of it, and that you may need to maybe adapt your style of communication to that context. Otherwise, you will probably get the wrong result.
Absolutely. And your golf example is pretty much occurring. It's exactly what is happening. Just a little touch of different behavior, and you may not be as successful as wanted.
It's just that's the subtle little change, and that was all it took.
The funny thing is, Erin Meyer, she has a matrix in her book, and it's called the Anglo-Dutch Translation Guide. Now,
really?
You are in the UK, so maybe you are already used to how the British people are using their language, huh? So I'll just give you an example.
Yep.
If the British, when they are saying, with all due respect,
yes,
we Dutch people, we think, oh, he's listening to me.
Huh?
No, it's meant, I think you're wrong.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, that is right. Yeah.
And another one, which is fantastic because we're using this so much. When the British are saying very interesting, the Dutch people, they think, oh, wow, he's impressed.
Yeah.
In the meantime, what you're trying to tell me is, I don't like it.
Yeah. Yes. That is exactly it.
It's a fantastic tool, but you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, politically correct, and its application. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Erin Myers, everyone. So the listeners out there, the culture map. Okay, that was the Anglo-Dutch Translation Guide. It's not that she is Dutch, is she? No, she's
American.
And she spent some time in Germany, was it? In France?
In France.
Is it Dutch because Dutch is is it because their culture is so different that they interpret things in a certain way? or maybe they have a good nature culture and they don't think people could be either rude or condescending, so they always think the best of everyone.
I'm not sure, but one thing is for sure. We comparing to the British people, you know, the Brits, they have a very sophisticated way of expressing themselves and using their language, and we don't. So if I'm giving feedback, I always hear from colleagues, "Ooh, that's very direct."
Yeah.
I know, sorry.
But yeah, no, you know, there is, I think that goes to the style of communication as well. Speaks to that, is that, you know, the direct or error approach is, but there is always the pro and con, or two sides to every, you know, situation or coin. Is in that error approach where the assumption is that the message is received in the same way, manner, and tone that it is sent. And so that's maybe a bias or a perception from the sender that, oh, so I've said it and they've now heard it and understand it the way I said it. But that is let's say, maybe the gap that, no, actually, it wasn't received the way you said it. And therefore it was misinterpreted. And then they took it in their own understanding and they did something else with it, and you didn't get the result you wanted.
Exactly. So, you know, also within Aaron Meyer's book, it has a couple more of these topics. I won't go through all of them, but I have another example which is also very much related to what we're doing with agility. And that's about evaluation. So here she's talking about direct negative feedback on one side of the X, or indirect negative feedback. And with direct negative feedback, she's saying negative feedback to a colleague is provided frankly, bluntly, honestly. So think of the Dutch. Indirect negative feedback to a colleague is provided softly, subtly, diplomatically. That's of course the main difference. And if you look at the axis again, it is saying Germany, Netherlands, Norway.
The plotted countries. He's plotted countries. Okay.
All on the direct negative, but also Denmark and France, and even a little bit towards the middle is Italy, Australia, Spain. So that's good for you, Italy as a reference. But if you go to indirect negative feedback, you're talking about Japan, Thailand, Indonesia. Now, I'm not surprised. My father's from Indonesia, so I can imagine totally the way how they are providing feedback. And for me, grown in the Netherlands, it's like guessing. What are they guys talking about? How do I need to understand this?
Okay, so this is really around, and as I said in the intro to the podcast, is you know, business transformators have moved past just design, because this is you know, there is, you know, I'll say that you know, standing on the shoulders of giants. That you know, business. My book framework is around business architecture, but it's more than just design. And you can't get a design, you know, the target operating model designed and built and implemented just by having technical people create it. It needs to be managed and implemented by people. Now, and so you need to negotiate with people, and part of that negotiation and coordination, and that all is all encapsulated around stakeholder management and stakeholders around people. Now, how that I see that being important there about the direct feedback is that, you know, this is all part of the stakeholder management, understanding your stakeholders, the communication. Like these 4 causes of transformation, well documented, well researched. You know, a lot of surveys out there that go out every year. Gallup does one, McKinsey does one, Gartner does one. almost every industry body does one, and they're still reporting the same thing. The four main causes: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, change in requirements, and incomplete requirements. And all of those are to do with people. It's a psychological problem, not a technical problem, not a process problem, not a technology problem. It's all to do with people. And that part there you're talking about is all about people.
That's right. Absolutely true. And that's why this makes it so interesting, the culture part.
Yeah.
So how do I experience the working collaboration with people in my mind?
Yeah.
But also taking the Agile Manifesto again, as that's our starting point.
Yep.
And on paper, we all agree this is good. We all understand what they are talking about. But how are we going to execute this in daily life? And talking about this business architecture, it's so important to get through all hierarchies, the commitment and the feedback, because that's all we want. Getting the fast feedback so we can adapt and inspect and adapt. But this is still, kind of, let's say, failure within agile transformations, which I'm seeing, where they are implementing a model and hoping the model is going to prescribe your cultural change, which is not going to happen.
Yeah, that's a key part there. Actually, who did we have on that's a podcast soon to come out about transforming the culture? There's not only are you transforming the business, but in some cases you're also transforming the culture. And so how do you measure culture? So there's a that's a pretty tricky thing to do. It's all the way we do things around here. And so actually it was VCAS from Gallup. That was his episode we covered there about transforming the culture. Just because that culture is hard to define, but is summarized as this is the way we do things around here. Nothing is written. Well, it's almost the unwritten rules.
That's right. Absolutely. That's also how they define culture in several Wikipedias. That's the way how we do things here. So, meaning you will not find a written handbook telling you how we are doing the things here.
They'll have probably a standard operating procedures book, some processes that are documented. But as you said earlier about the in the context, the sophisticated context, that the grey in between the reading between the lines. And so although the policies and procedures are written, there's a way they do things that is in between the lines.
Absolutely. Now, do you remember, Heath, do you remember Yoda, Master Yoda?
Yes.
I love Master Yoda.
Yeah, he's cool.
And I'm using Yoda as well in my trainings, but also in as a poster. His slogans are really cool, and one of his most famous slogans is "Unlearn what you have learned." So meaning, when I'm coming to a new company, we have a new company culture, we have a new way of working. And of course, 50-60% of what we're doing is quite similar to what I'm doing now. But the way how we move intercultural is different. And what I have learned, let's say at CG now, when I'm moving on, I have to forget and try to learn a new culture. And this is exactly where people are not willing to
unwilling.
Learned. And being open, being transparent to absorb all the new stuff.
I think that might even get to our third point, which I won't get onto that, about safety, about about behaving in a certain way, because that's the way we've always done it around here, despite the fact that in most cases, when they call in consultants or they stand up a project to transform the business, They're transforming the business because there's a problem, and the problem that's been created. And so this is like the current client I'm helping out right now. They told me that they've got this one big project process, and then it's morphed into so many, and they want me to crush it together and then digitalize it. And I said, are you sure that's what you want to do? And they said, yes. And I said, but what you're actually doing is you are with these projects doing two things: creating or enhancing existing capabilities, which will, if you do a good job, we're going to make money for the business, and it's going to stay with the business and make money for the business, or it's going to stay with the business and cost money every single year. But if you do a really good job, not only will they make money, but you will be able to reuse those capabilities and do it quicker, cheaper, faster, less risk, more predictability, which you have a big thing that you'll make your number one KPI about predictability, and then move the ship. And they say, that's what we want to do. I said, but that's not what you asked. That's, you were wanting something completely different. But part of that is changing the way they work. And then comes the culture shift. And then to your point about safety, people are too scared now to, or I think generally, people are scared when they had certain ways of working, got a certain result, and now they are asked to do new ways of working, but it needs to be within a new paradigm, a new safety maybe regime that's created so that they feel secure that they can behave in this new way. Otherwise, partly the reason of project transformation failure is because of people, business user involvement, change leadership, and changing incomplete requirements, is that the people struggle with the change.
Yeah, absolutely. What I see is, so luckily, I'd say we are working in smaller teams.
Yep.
The smaller teams are, of course, part of a larger team, but there is a drop down to Scrum team level, so to speak, where people are involved. And if you're lucky and you have this open, transparent communication,
yep.
And you have the safety, so this is an assumption, then people of all layers will be involved. And if you're talking about business transformation or business architecture, what way do we want to go and grow? And let's take, for instance, the business model canvas and value proposition canvas, where we can work together and think of what we are doing now. How does it need to look in a couple of months or 1 year? So what the change we have to go through? Then I think you have reached a very good starting point of safety. Or maybe for a lot of companies, that's already an ending point. Like, whoa, if we can get here, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
And exchanging the information with different layers of people in the hierarchy would be really good. Everybody's smart, everybody has an idea, and of course, together we can come up with even better ideas. But this kind of safety, that's a big question mark.
Yeah, I think that ties into what you talked about the context. Like I talk about in the book, and also in other articles I've published, about the 3 layers in an organization. There's the 3 L's: the layers, language, and levels. So the different layers being strategy, that's 1 layer, operations a second, and implementation and projects is a third. And every one of those layers has a different language. At strategy level, they're doing macro and financial and the big picture market competitiveness. That's what they're interested in. Operations have a different language. They're talking about turnover, sales, whether days off, what their churn rate is. And then down at project, and their language, they're talking in terms of process mapping and Kanban boards and points and story points and developers and their code. And the level of detail is also different. And so, big picture up the top in strategy, the medium level in operations, and then very detailed with code, very, very detailed down there, algorithms, etc. So understanding that context, is part of it, and not, I think probably technology consultants get the wrong end of the stick, but they come in and they talk another language, that only they understand. They haven't, let's say, assimilated to the business, haven't understood their language. They speak in another language. And what happens is the business will go, I don't understand what they're saying, but if we just nod our heads a little bit, and they'll finish talking soon, and then soon enough they'll leave, and then we can get back to the way things were before.
Yeah, I think this the difference in language. That's a wrong example of engagement. You're not engaged. So it's like we have two or at least two groups of people, and it might be much more. I wouldn't be surprised if it is not only technology, but it's also business. People don't really understand each language, and they are trying to convince, and they are trying to collaborate, of course, for the mission.
Yep.
On the other hand, just taking more time to being engaged and understanding, that would really help.
Yeah.
So we don't have to talk different or difficult language. It's it's quite
common.
simple.
Yeah, common language. Yeah, I have one of the first activities that I have in my approach is that after the statement of work and then agreeing the vision, which generally that in itself gets everyone on the same page. Everyone on talking, and not so much talking the same language, but heading in the right direction. But then the glossary is making sure that you've got your project glossary. Now, I've worked on a pretty major UK government program, and this is, I think, where the glossary goes wrong, is that a lot of people would decide that we're going to put every single term that was ever invented in this business, not just this transformation, but the entire business, even if the parts that are from other projects that are now defunct and closed and finished. I had over 700 terms on a glossary that I had to maintain. And it's like, and I had to fight, what's the term, hand and fist, to get them out of the glossary. So only if it's used. Only if these terms are used, and most importantly, if it's a contentious term, then it needs to be in this glossary, so that we get that common language. A case means the same thing in the operations as it does in implementation, as it does in strategy. Now, like in that one particular that project, the case managers would manage their pieces of work, what they call cases, and the guys in the project would say that's called service delivery.
Yeah.
And so they renamed what the business did, and the business said, they're not listening to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started laughing when you were talking about glossary.
Yep.
Also, wiki, that's another phenomenon where people start investing a lot of time in writing their wiki. Just to cover everything, but that's so classic approach. I think Google is the new wiki. You can Google, and it's not about a wiki. It's about showing understanding.
Yes.
We understand each other. That's it. And maybe I have to call you a couple of times just to make sure we have a good understanding.
Yes.
But it's more accurate than the wiki, more accurate than the glossary.
The key part there, definitely the understanding. Now, you talked at the earlier part, back onto the have we drifted away from the original manifesto about the 4 values? So and should there be a fifth? So what the 4 values for the listeners who aren't as familiar to the values as Peter here, now infinite centuries of experience and senior agile coach and trainer for many, most of Europe. So value number 1 is, what do we say? Individual interests over processes and tools. Is that the first one?
That's correct. Individuals and interactions. Yeah.
And then working software. That's interesting. Working software over comprehensive documentation. We'll come back to that in a second. And so I'll list them all out. So number 3, the value number 3 is customer collaboration, contracts. And number 4, responding to change over following a plan. Okay.
That's right.
So the question is, have we moved away from the manifesto, and is the manifesto still up to date? Just before we start there, I think a criticism of like they mentioned here software. Now Agile is used not in only software projects, and as in like business transformation. It's like I'd say, and here this is a 6-step Agile framework. Now, the criticism like I have of TOGAF, although standing on the shoulder of giants, there's a lot of good things I like about TOGAF, but there are some things that I don't like about TOGAF, like they don't acknowledge really business architecture, but they talk about this concept of enterprise architecture. So enterprise architecture is really two main domains: business architecture and technology architecture. And then there's subdomains in technology architecture. Now, the people that wrote the TOGAF are, which they say on their website, they are systems standards company. So they're focused on systems. Keyword there, systems. And so if we say here about, I understand individual interests over processes and tools, okay, and I think that's still valid. It's not so much about the process nor tools, it's about, if we say individual interests, stakeholders.
Yeah, it's individuals and interactions. Huh? Yep. So it's easier.
Individuals and interactions. Yep.
Yeah, it's easier to come to you and let's discuss instead of following the process, sending you an email, because that feels like, okay, job done, but at the end, nothing, no results.
Yes.
Together, our interaction is most important.
Yeah, okay. I think that's still valid today. The interactions, the individuals and interactions. I think they're, to your point is, I think there may be, like, there's a lot of, I think, on projects when resources get requested, they want to see some technical qualifications or training. But the one that this would speak to, and if we look at the causes of project failure, is people skills, is around, it's not so much have you got the technical skills. Yes, you need some technical skills, but it is that managing that interaction with individuals is the biggest part.
Absolutely right. Spot on. Yeah. Having a nerd in a team is not going to help the team.
Yeah. You've got to have everyone's got to be on the same page. Good vibe, good culture. Okay, and so the working software over comprehensive documentation. So I'm what's your thoughts on that? I have a particular view on that.
So when it started in 2001, it was all software related. Was it 17 guys who came together? They were all with a software background. Nowadays, I would say a working solution, and maybe solution is a little bit too much because we are doing it bit by bit, of course, but showing what you're doing is more important than just having the PowerPoints. And that's exactly what we are dealing with in the review. Show me the beef.
Show and tell.
And that's it.
Yeah, demonstrating. I think that value is still current and it needs to stay.
It's still valid.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of like non-technology or non-software projects, and say in this case here of myself and colleagues, and maybe even yourself with designing and developing, building and implementing the design of target operating model and handing that design to developers, technical architects to oversee the management of different components of that architecture, then that is a non-digital, non-technology implementation. So and I work in the same mindset of get these blueprints out to the business at quick intervals, or quick iterations, so that because I believe that the longer you work on it, the less value you add to it, because you don't have the answer. The answers actually are in the business user's head. It's your job to get it out of there. So, and how you get it out of there is the two ways: process and structure. So not so much working software over documentation, like working blueprints, working artifacts that they can actually use that are usable, not interesting but useless, which is the criticism that consultants get. They create these reams and reams and reams of PowerPoint presentations, and they print them off and put them in a room, and the room is called a war room, and then it looks very impressive, but is actually useless. But I'm a big advocate of the working software, the working documentation or blueprints over excessive documentation.
Yeah. Oh, Heath, I do remember a long time ago, together with my manager at the time, we spent hours on project progress reporting.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like every week, why am I doing this? And that's exactly this value number 2, where I'm thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, you've got to be working on it's like in lean, you want to focus on eliminating the waste elements of a process and only working on doing the add value elements of a process.
That's right.
Like the back end, admin work is, if you can eliminate it or reduce it, the better. Okay, number 3, customer collaboration over contracts.
Yeah, I think, still valid. Now, contract negotiation is a little bit far away in time, and hopefully it will stay that way. Now, of course, in the beginning, if we are going to do a project together or whatever, yes, we need a contract. Fair enough.
Yep.
But then we start working together and we will have problems, which is also fine. We know it's going to happen.
Yep.
So as long as we talk, so as long as we collaborate, as long as we have the positive vibe and the positive interaction, I'm not worried about the contract negotiation.
Okay, yep.
Because you were talking about personal skills.
Yep.
This is exactly what I truly hope people are going to bring next to their technical skills or whatever skill.
Yep.
Have some empathy, be polite, be respectful, and we have to do it together. It's like a football team. Work on it.
Oh yeah. Actually, it's funny you say football team. We're just arranging an off-site week-long workshop, and the host of where we're hosting it actually recommended. We said we're going to do some sort of team activity, and they, funnily enough, although I'm from New Zealand, recommended that we do they had themselves brought into the hotel a haka group, a New Zealand haka group, and so around that haka is, and I said, funnily enough, a good friend of mine, I'll give him a plug here, is Haka Works. That's Haka, HAKA Works, WORKS.com. It's Carl. So Carl and his team, we've been doing it for many years now, I think almost 20 years. And this is exactly what they do. They teach the haka to corporates coming there. It's all about team building, collaboration, about this shared purpose, shared goal, and that, like, if everyone is in this together and everyone's contribution is valued, and so we couldn't do this collectively without you. If there is, and the whole thing with the haka, it's a war dance. You are challenging the opposition to a war, and they don't do it before going to war. That if the way they form themselves and the way they're structured in their lineup, if they proceed not in sync, but they create a gap, and by creating a gap, it creates a weakness and puts the others at risk. So they mutually have the same respect for each other. So yeah, that's like a lesson there. I think maybe this project here, if they end up doing it, will be amazing for them. Yeah.
It sounds very cool. I'm jealous. I think haka is fantastic team building.
Oh yeah, it is. The All Blacks have a long winning streak. I think that they might be the most successful sports team in the world for having the longest winning streak, or not so that winning streak, but the number of wins as a team. And it's great cultural experience, I think, for both, you know, the New Zealanders, but also for the opposition and people watching. They get to see this. But what it's actually doing is, from the team's perspective, it is making them more cohesive just before the whistle blows off. And so now you're trying to stop like this machine that is just, you know, this is one, it's like playing, you've got 15 people on the team, but it's actually one person. They play and behave like one person. They can think of what they anticipate the next move of their teammates, because they know them so well, and you know, they have each other's. Their whole mantra is about leaving that jersey in a better position than they found it, or they got it, or inherited it. So they talk about they have a legacy to look after, but a legacy to leave. So and so in a corporate environment, there's a legacy that we have and we want to leave, and we're in this together. We have a shared purpose. So real powerful stuff. If you can take that from that culture and apply it to a sports, and from a sports team to corporate.
Now, I know I'm a little bit diversing here, but is it, would you mention it like swarming? You know, swarming, one team, knowing where we are going to. Yeah. But okay, forget it.
They are. Yes, it's very calculated. From a sports perspective, it's a very much a competitive advantage. Okay, so the fourth one. Responding to change over following a plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's start with the answer. Still valid. Yeah. And the reason is, even today, if you are asking a customer, what do you want? He or she doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's the same like building a house. So, Heath, how does your house needs to look like? Not only on the outside, because that's pretty easy, but on the inside, we don't have a fixed plan.
Yeah.
And this is also exactly where we come in as a third party, as external consultants, where we hopefully bring the skills to help the customer.
Yep.
And we are not too much focused on what we want, but we are helping. So yeah, for me, the 4 values, they're still valid.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that one. I think, and I think this ties in with the mindset part, is that a traditional project management, they would have a plan, a Gantt chart, a timeline, a roadmap. And it's clear activities and milestones. It will get you to your outcome that you want at a certain period of time. The typical project manager's dilemma: time, quality, and cost. You can have any two. Pick 2. Which 2 would you like? Now, from an agile mindset, was that and to that value there about responding to change as opposed to following the plan. Now. And this is what I tell guys in the book and the students and even clients, is that as we start and going through this transformation, and by sharing these blueprints and updates of the design and target operating model, the client will get to understand the problem better themselves. And by understanding that, like you just said there, we're building a house, and they said, we know what the outside looks like, but we got no idea what the inside looks like. And as you start building it, they get to see a bit of a clearer picture, and they go, actually, now I can see what we need in here, and their priorities change. And as their priorities changes, their needs change. And then so effectively all the design changes. And so that there would be responding to change over following the plan.
That's right. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
So and then there's this 5th value, the fifth one.
Yeah, the 5th one.
Mindset over culture. What do you think, Heath? Would that help us? Would it be?
Well, yeah, that's almost
value.
Well, I'm a big advocate of the mindset. Especially if you've come from, and you talked about it earlier, guys that have come from SAFe have a certain perspective on life, a certain way of they see things, versus Scrum have another. And every other derivative or permutation of Agile, Kanban has another view. So that there is, if you've come from a waterfall background where it's clear gated, approvals need to be made and locked and loaded, that the requirements are very clear and cannot change. And after that gate, then we proceed, and then until the next gate, and then everything's locked and loaded and again. Now, if there's any changes in there or any changes from here that you need to come back, they go, no, yep. And so, well, actually, as you just said earlier, building a house, they don't know until, hey, you've got the framework there, and then, oh, now I can get a bit of a picture, I can see, and I'd like to change my mind. So I think first and foremost, the mindset is very important, yes, but culture, maybe, I don't know if it's culture over, mindset over culture, but the two need to be aligned, so that the culture supports the mindset.
Yeah. The moment I came up with this fifth value, so to speak, it was also like, ooh, that's a difficult one. That's not easy. But I think we do agree. The 4 values, they're still valid.
Yep.
But in the meantime, we have learned so much more about agility, how to apply. People has also learned much more about Scrum, Kanban, and they're not only shallow, but really granular, in depth. And maybe we don't have to mention mindset or culture, but it's part of our working. So I think in trainings, in coaching, in helping people growing towards agility, will definitely help them to get there. Well, not ASAP, but make the move step by step for yourself.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think what you're saying is that, well, maybe I'll take the words out of your mouth, is it's about being explicit about culture. It's otherwise implied. And I think, it's like saying, okay, if there's no problem with transformation, or business transformation, and weren't reporting 70% failure rate, then there's nothing wrong with organizations doing their transformation themselves, or just changing their business model, changing their culture. There's no problem, but there is a problem, and they're reporting 7% failure rate. So something's not working. So what's not working? Maybe well, we said the four failure causes of failure, all to do with people. And so what is about people? Psychological. So, and tied into there is your culture. And if you say, the problem is culture, and we don't write it down, and there's nothing on the walls, but it's just the way we do things around here. It's like saying, let's staple the jelly to the wall. As you've got to lock this down. And it's like I tell the client, I said, if we are going to improve these processes, we first need to understand them. And to understand them, we need to document them. Now, we can do it either one or two ways. We can do it light touch or deep dive, depending how much time we've got and what the appetite is to do it. Whether there's a clear understanding, and it's very easy to understand these processes, or not at all. But the one thing is for sure, if you don't measure it, you cannot improve it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the culture. If you can't define it, then how can you improve it? Or how can you change it? You can't.
Yeah. No, that's right. And there again, it's like measurement is very important. So even if it is not in numbers, you still have to try to measure, where are we now? And where are we going to? And are we there yet? Yes or no? Yeah. Wow, what a topic, yeah?
I love it. Okay. All right. So so do we? Well, actually, that was number 2. Was the agile culture? I think we've talked about that. So what about the agile culture? Is there an agile business consortium?
Yeah. They have some interesting stuff. When I was preparing and reading and so on, of course, when you're using Google, there's so much to find. But if we are talking about agile culture, and the question is, what is it then? Do you have a definition? Well, the guys from this Agile Business Consortium, they do have, and they call Agile Culture is about creating an environment that is underpinned by values. There we go. Behaviors and practices which enables organizations, teams, and individuals to be more adaptive, flexible, innovative, and resilient when dealing with complexity, uncertainty, and change. If you read this definition a couple of times, it's good. Yes, it's good. It's very much what we are doing today. And reading this out loud makes me understand better what we are trying to define by culture, agile culture. What do you think?
There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so agile culture. I think agile culture is a culture that supports being agile. And so what would that mean is probably going back to the values, and the one probably I like about most of the values is about change over following the plan. Be prepared, responding to change as opposed to following the plan. And so you have a general direction. It's the path that you take to get to the outcome that may subtly change. But you have the ability to, and you will be able to change if and when needed. And I think that is, if I sort of say, if I was to summarize agile culture, I'll say, there's the culture that has the ability to accept change and over following a plan. In summary.
Definitely. No, definitely agree. So when you're taking the little bits apart, you can relate it to value number 4. Responding to change. It is indeed in the agile culture.
Okay, so I'll just say that back for the listeners so that they could hear it again. So the agile culture is about creating an environment that is underpinned by values, behaviors, and practices, which enables organizations, teams, and individuals to be more adaptive, flexible, innovative, and resilient when dealing with complexity, uncertainty, and change. Well, I think that's very comprehensive definition there. So basically, a culture that supports the ability to change. Cool. I think like with in the 3 L's, if that direction for that to hold and stick an organization has to come from the top. It has to be endorsed from the top and followed through, filter through down through the organization. Otherwise, it will never take hold and no one will believe it.
True. And so I think if you look at this agile culture, we know responding to change, which is good. And the Agile Business Consortium, they have written about the DNA and they gave some examples and so on, but we don't have to go through all the DNA stuff. I think now we know agile culture and we also know what we're doing in reality. We are coming to a point where you also see these anti-patterns.
Yes. The patterns and anti-patterns.
That's right. And I think anti-patterns is very exciting. For an experienced coach, it's very exciting because it's like, what is ongoing here? Where have I seen this before? How can I name it? And there are some really good white papers out there with a lot of anti-patterns you can find.
Okay.
And what I remember from earlier,
just for context there, for the listeners. And in architecture terms, patterns, particularly technology architecture, they like to, it's like summarize, or they like to summarize, but they use patterns to summarize, the way systems interaction, interoperability. So there is a method or technique to describe or decompose complex ideas or systems down into quite simple things. So a pattern is the way of describing or ways things naturally or typically work. So an anti-pattern then would be, in your definition,
if you say an anti-pattern, this is going against the pattern to be more effective, to be more fluent, to have the flow. So what you are seeing is a reversed behavior or a reversed way of working, meaning it's not going as mentioned.
Okay, so is it say it's counterintuitive, or it is
that's one. It's ineffective, and it's like not desired.
Okay.
And if we take we take the culture, we take the anti-pattern, and then the third ingredient, what we discussed was the psychological safety.
Yep, safety.
So these three ingredients, they're coming together. And if you're talking about a performing team, they know what they do, then they have this safety in the team.
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly what they can do.
Yep.
And they are working with patterns only and not anti-patterns.
Okay. Yep.
Now, if you take someone out of the team or someone who is not into Agile,
yep,
he or she
joins the team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is going to disturb the flow in the team by adding some new elements which are not wanted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that really anti-pattern in that context is a disruption.
Yeah.
A disruption to the norm.
Yeah.
It breaks the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's easier said, but that's exactly what it is. Example, daily stand-up, taking 45 minutes, and the manager is part of the daily, and he or she is talking.
Yeah.
That disruption, that's not effective. That's not what you want.
Okay. So yeah, in that context, it's anti-pattern's been a disruption that ruins the pattern.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, for the viewers, and I'm sure all the viewers know about the stand-up or scrums, and why it was called a stand-up is because it's supposed to be literally standing up, and keep to the 3 bullet points. What you did yesterday, what you're going to do today, and what's going to stop you. And so so to have a long stand-up is it's not a stand-up, it's a meeting now. And so you've defeated the purpose of a stand-up, and you're not probably going to get the same outcome. The purpose of the stand-up is to get the result being that shared information about, and from the Scrum Master's perspective, is that they will hear what's going to block them and unblock it for them.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So because you talked about safety then, so it was anti-patterns. So so what is with the anti-patterns and safety in Scrum and Agile? Sorry. The psychological safety, rather. Sorry.
Yeah. So if we are working in a team, right?
Yep.
And if I'm not feeling safe in a team for whatever reason, it could be me and the teammates, we don't go along very well, then I'm not really transparent. I'm not open. Mm-hmm. Meaning I'm not willing to share my thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. And to that point, in Scrum, as the 3 pillars of Scrum, one of those pillars is transparency.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And not being transparent, so not giving my honest opinion to help the team, mm-hmm. is destructive. That's an anti-pattern. Uh-huh. So just a simple example, with the retrospective, if you as a Scrum Master or coach are asking me, is there anything wrong in the team, or is there anything you want to give feedback to the team? And I don't feel safe, I won't do it.
Yeah, you won't give feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't give constructive feedback.
That's right.
How the team could learn. Yep.
I'd rather be silent.
Yep.
You know how it goes, and then hopefully retrospective will be over in 2 hours, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's wrong. That's not the way how we should work.
Okay, so the lesson there is around safety is that you must create a safe environment where people can feel that they are. It is safe to discuss, talk, raise issues and concerns without the threat of being either ostracized or ridiculed, criticized, because the outcome is it's for the betterment of the team.
Yeah.
Okay, and so so Agile at the moment, the psychological safety is, and in that context there, in Agile environments of it's been probably particularly around, well, it would occur in a couple of probably ceremonies, if we talk in correct terms, and Scrum anyway, in the stand-up, is that people like to air all their pains. So no, that's not the purpose of the stand-up. So if you have pains, it's another meeting, or not that meeting, or maybe just on the side of the Scrum Master. With the retrospective, as the lessons learned that you're raising what worked, what didn't work, and then you should not feel either obligated or threatened that to not reveal things, issues that would derail or maybe upset some people. It's in the best interests. So so who can help with controlling that safety so that people would feel? Who's responsible for that?
There are, let's say, more than one people involved here. So first, it's the team itself, the developers. People like you and me.
Yep.
We have to make sure we are trusted and we can trust each other in the team.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm, let's say, bullying a little bit, because I'm more senior, I have more knowledge, this is not going to help the juniors to speak free. Now, the Scrum Master or the Agile Coach can help here as well. So he or she can channel this kind of behavior and try to get rid of it with the team together, get a better understanding why we shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, within the organization itself, so on a smaller level within the business unit or within the IT department, you have to be sure this is not going to happen in other teams as well. It should not be like a frequent behavior which is seen, making sure it's eliminated all over the teams. So it's more than just one person, and it's very difficult.
So there needs to be some maybe empowering from, let's say, for those transformation division in charge of all their change resources, change people, that direction would need to come from them to say about what's maybe supporting behavior, positive behavior looks like, and to encourage the feedback, if that's the term, without the threat of being criticized, because it's a learning. I think they're going to really, the culture is that a high performing team is a learning team. A high performing organization would also then be a learning organization. Learn to take feedback, learn to take the lessons, and then do something with them positive.
That's right. Absolutely right. And I think that's the right approach as well. So it doesn't make sense to punish people. Punishment is a little bit outdated. That's the wrong way, wrong approach. But teaching people how it should be or must be is much, much better.
I know that it is it's maybe it's encouraged in some circles, but maybe in some others it isn't. Maybe because there are commercial, contractual motivation to not say certain things, and hope that it doesn't upset the apple cart. Okay, so in terms of safety, is there needs to be a culture that supports the safety, and how that let's say becomes visible that there is an issue with people not speaking their mind, with not contributing, with not giving honest feedback. And then the mitigation there is for 2 levels. You took the project level, maybe program or portfolio level, even division level. Is I think it's ownership from at the project levels, and self like if it's teams, it's self-directing. People should take their own ownership, but mostly led from the Scrum Master or the project manager. And then at department level, it is at the maybe the division headed division.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
That sounds, I think we got a plan, Heath. Let's make it happen tomorrow.
I think we didn't. You didn't let the cat out of the bag for the next book, but you could have. Yeah. So there's a big thing around culture. Like I'm a big fan of culture. I think it is with this working from home environment now that we find ourselves in, but also Google here in the UK. Google have just spent $1 billion on a new building, which is it's $1 billion not for customers, $1 billion for staff to get back in the office. And so I talked about this on previous podcasts about, I think the silent victim in this working from home environment is the culture. The culture is getting killed, and there's no spokesperson for culture. But you see these big companies who have access to a lot of data that others may not have. Example, Google. They have already made the big call, spent $1 billion on a new building to get their staff in the building. What does the building represent? It represents bringing everyone back into the same environment that builds and maintains that strong culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. Bring back the people together, maintain or growing the culture again, because we lost 2 years.
Yes.
And it's time to get connected again.
Oh yeah. I talked about this before on the previous podcast about a program director that I worked alongside in Australia, and I asked the question in a poll about is this work from home here to stay, and he replied and he said, yep, we're only going to get together, we're 100% working from home, only going to get together for a meal. And I said, wait a minute, you're only going to come together to share a meal together. Why can't you just share a meal while you're sitting in front of your PCs on your Zoom? And he said, oh, no, we need to be together. And I said, do you not see the difference between you being together in a working environment, collaborating, creative sessions, and the cohesiveness that you have as a team happens in a room, but you'll only do that for a meal. I said, can you not see that the value is also in bringing everyone together to work together, not just sitting together to eat a meal?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What a luxury do they have? Only for meal coming together, but no, I think they missed the point.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm going to check back in maybe a year's time and say, how did you go with that? And whether they decided. And I said, well, how's the business going? Have you had a high turnover? People love working from home, but it'll be up to a point where there's the blurred lines of home and work there's no difference anymore. You're always on. Your work life is home life is work. And it's like,
that's right.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, let's recap there, Peter. So we might have just gone a little bit over time, but so we discussed the Agile Manifesto. Was it still currently changing? The Agile Culture, what is it? Can we define it? And then the psychological safety, which is really around we talked about patterns and anti-patterns. So in terms of the manifesto, we talked about the 4 values, and we've said, and everyone referred to, is it Professor, Dr. Aaron Myers, her culture map. That sounds, it's a must read, that one. So the Anglo-Dutch translation guide, the Matrix, sounds very interesting. And there's a way that maybe not just the Dutch, but the different cultures, and I said that's really country cultures as opposed to corporate cultures, right? But that translates into corporate culture. You know, what he's that's interesting. Oh, he's impressed. No, you don't like it, which is completely the other way around. What do we talk about? The evaluation about direct and indirect feedback, and then different cultures have a different probably perspective or preference, maybe bias to what they like. And we brought in yoga there. Unlearn what you have learned. I think that's that's a good lesson for us all, and that also becomes perception biased, where I know what I know, and that's what I know, and that's therefore I will do it. So how well is that working for you? And so so sometimes every now and then we might need to step back. There we went through the 4 values. A key part around the values was really showing understanding, people skills. That I talked about when resources come onto projects, they really look for what qualifications do they have, what training have they done, but it's real technical. And the key part there is not just the technical, is the cultural.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So and then we had the 5th value, the mindset over culture, which is a fantastic one. I think you should make a proposal to maybe if it's the business Agile Consortium, and make a case for that. I think definitely I'm on board for both of them. I think they need to be aligned. I'm not sure if one is over the other, but that's a ongoing. Like we said earlier, culture is implicit, and if you want to change it, you need to measure it. And so if you don't have it explicitly stated somewhere, then good luck to you. You're never going to do it. And the Agile Business Consortium have a fairly comprehensive definition of what they say is Agile business, Agile culture. And then lastly, we talked about the anti-patterns and safety, and that they're almost counterintuitive, or they are disruptive. That they like the technical person or someone that joins a team that interrupts the flow. You need to address that. Who is going to address it at 2 levels? Scrum Master at the project level, and then if you want to make this a behavior across the division or organization, it's got to come from the top. And the main part there being, we want 2 things. We want to be trusted, and we want to be able to be trust and to be able to be trusted. So and then how you do that? Coaching by, where do you go? Peter.
Fantastic. Now that's a good summary.
Thank you very much.
And these were good topics as well.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Peter. That was great. We have not spoken that much, have we? But the way that I think we're aligned on Agile and culture, it's I find it very interesting. I think there's a lot of practitioners out there that we live in an environment now, say digital transformation or business transformation, which is enabled with digital, and the focus is on technology or digital technology, and less so much about the people element. But what are we seeing a lot of? This thing keeps coming up: culture, people. Yeah, I think we need to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, sounds like we got a plan.
Yeah.
And actually, fantastic being on your show, and I'm looking forward to the podcast. So
well,
when it's ready.
So I'll keep you posted of when it's going to come out. Hopefully, it's not too long. We don't have a backlog or too big of a backlog right now. In Agile terms. So I'll let you know and when it comes live, and you're welcome to share it around. I'll put the show notes in the notes will go into the description under the video or if it's on the podcast on Spotify or Google or Apple. They'll see references there to your LinkedIn, to your current company that you're at, and also the references to Aaron Meyer's books. So any references there, and also the Business Consortium. We'll put the links in there. So any of the books that we've put, we'll discuss. We'll put on in the show notes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, Peter.
Great.
Thank you
Was
very much.
really cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
We'll be in touch for
All
part 2
right.
when I'm going to share with you the 3rd book. Okay, Peter. Thank you very much, mate. Okay, have a good night.
Thank
Okay,
you.
see you. Bye.
Bye bye.
I never made it, but I know I